mothers especially, of course, but not just mothers, fathers too. That bond that should be stronger than any other bond on the face of the earth, the one between a mother and her child, is set up against each other, where they are against each other. One of the more popular arguments in favor of abortion is that the child in the womb is an aggressor against her mother. How absurd is that? This is where we've gotten. This is why abortion is singular and unique. Not just because of its numbers, okay, but because it attacks the dignity of human life where it is most vulnerable, attempts to nip it in the bud, if you will, and attempts to create this hostile relationship between parents and a child, in the midst of that relationship that should be the embodiment of love and sacrifice. When the scriptures talk about the love of God for us, the scriptures compare the love of God for us to the love of a mother for her child. Because we just know, it's instinctual, there is no other love that is deeper, more profound, less easily broken than the love of a mother for her child. And the Lord says, yet even if the mother should forget her child, which is unfathomable, that's why the scriptures use that example, because it's simply unfathomable to the people of that time that a mother could forget the child in her womb. God will not forget us. Okay? This is why abortion is so singularly horrible. For those reasons. Now, how do we attack? How does our culture attack human life? It's very simple. It's the same way it's attacked all human life. By denying the humanity of the one in the womb. If you wanted, whenever in human history, one group of people wanted to destroy another group of people, the way they did that was to convince themselves that that group of people is not people, or somehow less people. So, because they're not people, or because they're less people, we're justified in destroying them. And it's as simple as that. Except now it's gotten more complicated and more horrifying. Because now the pro-abortion movement has changed its tactics a little bit, because they've been forced to. Science is on the side of the one in the womb. Every medical and nursing journal published in this country, every single one, will tell you that it's a fact of biology that human life begins at the moment of conception. It's not a religious belief. It's a fact of biology. And confirmed by every medical and nursing journal published in this country. Snopes ran an article that tried to claim that that was not the case, that the humanity, that when life began was still open in scientific questions. So I wrote in the comment section a very long response detailing the more than a dozen, maybe as many as 20 medical and nursing journals, and quoting them where they talked about how life began, human life begins at the moment of conception. They took that article down because they didn't want that comment up there. They didn't want people to see that comment. Okay? It's a fact of biology. Human life begins at the moment of conception. And now what's happening is, because science has demonstrated that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the pro-abortion movement has started saying, yes, abortion takes a human life, but so what? So now we have John Kerry running for President of the United States, saying that he's a Catholic, saying that he believes in what the church teaches about the identity of the one in the womb, but that abortion is still okay. We have Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, who says he's a Catholic, saying the same exact thing. They absolutely agree with the church's teaching that human life begins at the moment of conception, that every abortion kills a human life, but it's still okay. This is disconcerting. What other human lives are they okay with taking? Why stop at abortion? Why stop there? And as we find out, they're not interested in stopping there. Okay? Now we have euthanasia. Euthanasia is given the misnomer of mercy killing. Okay? The mercy is more for the people who don't want to be bothered with their loved one who is suffering. Maybe that's a mean thing to say, but I don't think it's an untruthful thing to say. Okay? Why is euthanasia wrong? Because you don't kill people. It's that simple. The situation does not exist that justifies the willful destruction of innocent human life. It doesn't. Listen to that. The circumstances do not exist that justify the willful destruction of innocent human life. That includes the elderly, the sick, the infirm, the near dying, and those in the womb. Okay? What difference does it make, they ask, whether we allow nature to take its course or whether we preempt nature and directly kill them? It makes all the difference in the world if you recognize the dignity of the human person. If you don't recognize the intrinsic dignity of the human person, it doesn't matter. I give them that. If you don't recognize the intrinsic dignity of the human person, it doesn't matter. But if you do, it makes all the difference in the world. Okay? Because where does that dignity come from? It doesn't come from the state. It doesn't come from me. It doesn't come from the doctors. It's a dignity given to them by God. Our only response to that dignity is to respect it. Because it's not ours to give, so it's not ours to take. It's not ours to acknowledge, it's only ours to acknowledge. It's not ours to reject. Our only response to the intrinsic dignity of the human person is to respect that dignity. And to respect that that dignity is given to them by God and not by us. Now, why is this such an emotional issue? Because in our medical community, we are terrible at dealing with pain. Okay? But Bob, my grandmother's in terrible pain. What should we do? Treat the pain. Treat the pain. But we're terrible at that. We're terrible at it. I don't know why. We have some of the best medicines in the world available to us to treat pain. But we are so hesitant in being aggressive in doing that. Now, the church does teach, if a person is terminal and they are dying, and can you medicate them, okay, with the intention of bringing comfort, but with a secondary effect, maybe being the hastening of death? Can you do that? Yeah, we do that all the time. We do that all the time. Everybody in here, except the 12-year-old, is going to get in a car and drive away. We are putting our life at risk in doing that. We are potentially hastening our deaths in doing that. But we weigh the benefits and the risks, right? So we do that. Every day we do that. So yes, you can medicate a person with the intention of relieving pain, even if in doing that you may be hastening the moment of death. Because hastening the moment of death is not the intention of the act. In the same way that getting into a car accident and getting killed is not the intention about getting behind the wheel of a car. Does that make sense? We do this every day. Every day we put our lives at risk. Okay? You eat a hamburger, the next day you may be in the hospital with some flesh-eating bacteria. I'm not kidding. You are putting your life at risk. Life is full of risk. So it's okay to do that. But you cannot directly kill the person, because that is assuming an authority that you don't have. The authority over life and death. That is not yours, that is God's. In the same way. Now, a gynecologist, an OBGYN, if they're a good one and an honest one, will tell you that the circumstances whereby a mother's life is at risk from her pregnancy are nigh onto, or some of them just flat out say they're non-existent. Why is this? Because if a mother is having complications of a pregnancy, okay, to the point where her life is at risk, the safest and quickest way to get that mother out of harm's way is what? Deliver the baby! That's how you do it. That's how you save the mother's life. You deliver the baby. You don't kill the baby. You deliver the baby. And that's why we're having more and more and more OBGYNs speaking out and saying publicly this idea that we have to have abortions to save a woman's life is bunk. Okay? And this is why the strategy of the pro-choice movement is changing. Because they know that it's taking human life. See, they used to say it was a clump of cells. Ultrasounds won't let us say that anymore. Okay? They used to say it was to save the life of the mother. OBGYNs are coming out and saying that's bunk. The best way to save the life of the mother is to deliver the baby. Okay? Now, can you... You know, we're not even going to go there because it's bunk. We're not even going to go there. Stem cells.
You got time.
I have 4 minutes.
You're fine.
You know what? We're good.
Yeah.
I think we're good. Hmm?
Yeah, you're fine.
You want to go over a little bit?
Go for it.
We'll go over. Embryonic stem cells. Okay? Embryonic stem cells. Why is that immoral? It's immoral because to harvest these stem cells, you have to kill the embryo. You have to. There's no other way to harvest embryonic stem cells but to kill the embryo. And science, as well as faith, okay, not even so much faith. It's faith responding to what we know by science, okay? That's the best way to put it. We don't believe that these are human beings. We don't believe that this is human life. We know that it's a human life because science has demonstrated that incontrovertibly. Science has demonstrated that life begins at the moment of conception. This is how our faith is responding to that knowledge. Okay? And our response in faith to that knowledge is that if this is a human being, and it is, because it's a being, it exists, this is a being, everything that exists has being, and an embryo has being. What kind of being does it have? It has a human being. That's all we mean. It's a human being. Okay? It's a human life, and it's alive. Why is it alive? Because it possesses all of the characteristics consistent with life at that stage of development. And that's the key. At that stage of development. Just like an infant, a newborn, possesses all of the qualities of human life consistent with that stage of development. Just like a 12-year-old possesses all of the characteristics of human life consistent with that stage of development. Okay? Just like each one of us do. All right? We are people constantly in stages, various stages of development. But we're all human beings. We're all alive because we all possess those characteristics that are consistent with our particular stage of development, human development. Make sense? And so does an embryo. And to harvest the stem cells from an embryo, you have to kill the embryo. Now, this is also why in vitro fertilization is immoral. One of the reasons is because almost always, not always, but almost always, more embryos are made or created than can be implanted into the mother's uterus. Those other embryos are either frozen, which is really difficult morally, killed, destroyed, or used for research, which is very problematic because then we're talking about creating human beings for the purpose of research. Is that what human beings are for? I don't think so. And God doesn't think so. One of the things that is basic to Catholic philosophy and used to be basic to Western culture is that you can use things, you can't use people. I can use this pen, but I can't use you. Okay? Because you are not an object. You are a subject. You are a person. And you, as a person, you possess a dignity. Where does that dignity come from? It comes from God. So my only appropriate response to the dignity you possess as a human person given to you by God is to respect that dignity. It all comes back. Do you see what? It all comes back to the same points. All comes back to the same points. And that is respecting the intrinsic dignity of the human person. The other reason in vitro fertilization is immoral from a Catholic perspective is because it is the creation of life outside of the conjugal union. Okay? Basically, one of the purposes of sex is to make babies. And the only moral way to make babies is by means of sex between a husband and a wife. That's the only way. That's the only moral way. Okay? And in vitro fertilization it always means creation of human life outside, okay, of the conjugal act. It always means that. It often means creation of human life, okay, for a particular couple using the products of another person who is not part of that union. And that is immoral. That is morally problematic. Okay? So if I want to have a baby with my wife, but I can't conceive, okay, you bring in some other man, we use his sperm to fertilize her eggs, and bam, the baby in her womb, planted in her womb, isn't even mine by blood, by DNA. Okay? So that's why that's immoral. What else do we have? the death penalty. Now, the church's teaching on this has not changed, contrary to the way it's been presented in the press. And often, let's be honest, in the way it's been presented in classes like this, because, some people aren't fully informed. The church's teaching on the death penalty was basically founded on Thomas Aquinas, who said that in order to protect society from a heinous criminal, it is sometimes necessary to kill that criminal. Okay? The purpose of capital punishment, the only Catholic justification for capital punishment, was the protection of society, not punishment, not retribution, not justice against the perpetrator of the crime, however heinous that crime may be. The only Catholic justification for capital punishment was to protect society. A number of years ago, 20, 25 years ago, Pope John Paul came out and said, you know what? We have other ways of protecting society now. That makes capital punishment virtually unnecessary. Now, he did say virtually. So, can a Catholic approve of capital punishment? In theory, yes. A Catholic can approve of capital punishment. But only for the protection of society, not as a means of punishing the criminal. And that has to be clear. Capital punishment is not justified as a punishment or retribution against the criminal. It's not it's not to bring justice, okay? Because what is justice? Justice is, if I steal your pig, I return your pig. If I steal your money, I return your money. If I steal your car, I return your car. That's true justice. If I take your life, I return your life? What? No. That's not possible. So true justice in that sense can't be achieved unless you're Jesus and you can raise the dead. Okay? That's why capital punishment isn't justified as a form of justice, but as a form of protecting society. And John Paul made the decision that, or reflection, offered the reflection that there are other ways we can protect society, and so capital punishment isn't justified anymore. Can you disagree with him? Yes. Okay? But not on grounds of justice. Now, there are other reasons for opposing capital punishment, real good reasons for opposing capital punishment. The primary good reason for opposing capital punishment is that basically we are telling this person, you have until this date to get yourself right with God. And if you don't, toodles for you. Too bad for you. That is not a Catholic perspective. That is not a Catholic understanding of either justice or mercy. Okay? It's for God to decide how much time to give a person to get himself right with God. It's not for us to decide. Okay? It's not for us to decide. So if we can protect society, and in John Paul's idea we can, all right, then capital punishment really can't be justified anymore. There are all kinds of other problems with capital punishment. One is that it's carried out in an extremely racist manner. There have been, over the course of the history of the United States, about 18,000 executions, legal executions in the United States. In 42 cases, 42 of those cases represented a white person who was executed for killing a black person. Out of 18,000, 42 cases represented a white person executed for murdering a black person. Do you think those stats are similar in the other direction? No. No. And that's why one of, I think, again, a strong Catholic reason for opposing capital punishment is because it's an extremely racist process. Extremely. It's also weighed against the poor. Because, you think O.J. Simpson would have gotten off if he had cheap lawyers? No. He wouldn't have. And we all know these cases. We all know these cases of wealthy people who commit these horrible crimes, and then, they receive these light sentences because they have lawyers who are sophisticated enough to manipulate the system. The poor don't have access to those attorneys. They just don't. Okay? The other strong reason against capital punishment is that we know that innocent men and women have been exonerated. In Tennessee, since 1976, there have been 6 executions. There have been 3 cases of innocent men exonerated who were sitting on death row, waiting to be executed, and evidence came up that they were innocent. 6 versus 3, that's a total of 9. The last time I did math, 3 was 1/3 of 9. That's a huge percentage. That is massive. 9 scheduled executions, and 1/3 of them were found to be innocent? Currently, there are 72 men or women, I don't know if there are any women, but there are 72 people on death row in Tennessee. What percentage of them are innocent? I don't know. It would be interesting. Do they have the resources to fight their case? I don't know. But that's a lot. You got to figure that in the U.S. we've executed innocent people. The odds are just there. We have to have had innocent men executed. It would be unfathomable given the odds. And that's another good reason why the church opposes the death penalty. Okay. So, does anybody have any questions? I've been kind of summarizing quickly the church's position. The biggest thing I wanted to get across was that foundation. Not necessarily, because we all know where the church stands on abortion. We know where the church stands on euthanasia, okay? But I want to make sure we know why, okay? So that when we face these people, these Gnostic solipsists, okay? When we face these arguments, we can come about it intelligently, okay? We can come about it intelligently. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to come back intelligently, okay? As far as they're concerned, you're an idiot, okay? But that's okay. As Dorothy Day said, we admit to being fools for Christ and wish that we were more so. Okay? And that is how you will appear to the world, to our culture. You will appear as fools. You will have to have the balls to be willing to stand counter to our culture. Because that's where you will be. That's where you will be. Okay? Does anybody have any questions?
No, that was very good.
I do have a question.
Uh-huh.
The case where, I actually have several questions, but I asked the most, the one that's bugging the heck out of me. You talked about the child being the product of conjugal love between a husband and wife, and that's what sex is for. If a woman is raped and has a child, that's not the product of conjugal love. So how does, is the woman supposed to bear the child if she got pregnant?
Yes, basically, and this is why. Okay? If we say that abortion is justified in cases of rape or incest, for instance, then basically what we are arguing is that the dignity of the human person is contingent on the circumstances of their conception. Okay? In other words, you're saying, we are arguing that you only possess a right to life, you only possess this dignity if you were conceived under the right circumstances, under these particular circumstances. Okay? But if you're conceived under these particular circumstances, then you don't possess a dignity that we are bound to respect. You don't possess a right to life. Okay? Now, if you take that to the logical, to its logical conclusion, then if we're willing to say that your dignity as a human person is contingent on the circumstances of your conception, okay? The circumstances of your conception never change, regardless of how old you are. After you're born, when you're 2, when you're 10, when you're 40, when you're 80, you're still someone who was conceived in rape. See what I'm saying? So that lack of dignity, logically, if that lack of dignity is attached to you in utero, there's nothing about ex utero that changes that fact. And if you're a 40-year-old person who was conceived in rape, you still don't possess that dignity, because the circumstances of your conception haven't changed. Does that make sense? Okay? That's the problem. But the basic problem is that we are saying that your dignity is contingent on the circumstances of your conception. And that's problematic, because then we are saying that your dignity, who chooses? Who chooses which circumstances are okay and which circumstances are not? Okay, rape and incest, those are bad. What about conceived in poverty? What about conceived as out of wedlock? You know, maybe it's a conjugal act of love, but they're not married. Who gets to decide what circumstances, okay, are okay and what circumstances are not okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, let's go back here first.
The one, to me, the one thing that links that problem is the depth of understanding Catholicism. It's not what we see here and now, but it goes beyond the triumph and the suffering militant. We pray for those who are not yet in God's 100% grace.
Mm-hmm.
So if the rapist were repentant at some point, or we pray for that individual to secure the sanctity of that life,
Mm-hmm.
or of the young, scared female or male who supports abortion because they don't understand, we have an obligation to pray for those that we feel most disturbed by.
And to support.
Yes.
And
And,
to
and
support.
that's where we are now as a nation is so painful, because our very own relatives and children do not understand what that dignity is.
Yeah. We live in very trying times, because, and again, it's just, to be Catholic is to stand counter. It just is. And it's hard to say that. It's hard to say to a woman, yeah, it's immoral for you to abort a baby that was conceived in rape or incest. Okay? And nobody's going to pretend that it's easy. And nobody, you know, that's why we need to create systems of support for these people. But, you know, we might be surprised about the people out there that we know or don't know who were conceived in rape. There was a famous, a very popular, very beautiful, and very talented news anchor called Faith Daniels. I don't know if anybody you remember Faith Daniels. But she was a very popular news anchor woman, okay, back in the 1980s. And she got on a show one time and revealed that she was conceived in rape. Okay. Now, and here she is now, very successful, very accomplished, respected by people all over the place. And what if her mother had decided, you know, that she shouldn't be? You know, there are all kinds of people out there, including some of us. You know, my mother shouldn't have had me. It was terrible, it was ridiculous. She had 6 kids, 2 after me, they both died, they died shortly after childbirth or born dead. They were poor. I mean, I grew up on food stamps, public housing, free lunch programs. I went to 5 different elementary schools because every time the rent went up, we moved. You know? I shouldn't have been born. There were all kinds of reasons for me not to be born. You know? We were dirt poor. They had no business having me. They probably had no business having sex. Honestly.
It was free. It was free.
Something to do. You know, it's like the daughter who's one of 13 kids. What did our parents do before the internet? But that's the basic bottom line, is that our dignity is given to us by God. It's not contingent on the circumstances of our birth. And to say that, well, these circumstances justify the willful destruction of innocent human life, that's basically what we're saying. That our dignity is contingent on the circumstances of our birth, and not just for the child conceived in rape, but for every single one of us. Because we were just lucky to be conceived by 2 parents who loved each other. There are lots and lots of people, not just victims of rape, lots and lots of people who are not conceived by people who love each other. Yeah.
I'm struggling with the issue of, I understand that once we have conception, it's human.
Mhm.